I bought a second-hand Specialized Tarmac for just £400, but is it a bargain or a load of scrap? To find out, a pro bike mechanic is giving the bike a full inspection to find out. This video also serves as a useful guide and reference for anybody looking to buy a pre-loved second-hand used road bike, what to look out for, the general pitfalls and much more. So let's dive in.
I'm going to start from down here, and first thing I'm going to do is we're just going to do the front wheel. So the very first thing is I'm going to rock the hub left to right and have a bit of a feel of whether there's play in the bearings. The wheel is a bit flexy, but that might just be its nature. It's basically moving left to right between the pads there. I'm going to check the spoke tensions. I'm not going to put a meter on it, I haven't got time for that, but what I always do is I do this in pairs very quickly just to see if I can find any spokes that are obviously going a bit bandy or even broken, because you'd be surprised how easy it is to miss that. They all feel okay. Does it spin? Yeah, it's actually quite nice and quiet. It's not bad at all, and I'm having a look to see if it's true. Yeah, it's got a little wave in it at one point, but it's certainly within tolerances. It's probably no more than half a mil. It is there. So it's out of true in one place. The next thing I'm going to do is so the problem with aluminium wheels is this is the braking surface, and by definition the pad destroys the braking surface, which is probably an argument for moving to discs. What I really want to know is that worn beyond its safe tolerances? So is the wall of that wheel rim becoming so badly etched that there just isn't enough material left for it to be safe, and then we would worry that one day, it's just going to collapse under load. So it is getting a bit dished. It's not terrible. I'm going to look to the wear indicator. It's different for different wheels. Sometimes it's a line that emerges as it wears. Sometimes it's a line that disappears as it wears. There's no international standard. Sometimes there's a hole that appears. In any case, I would say these wheels, notionally speaking, are worn, but I think from feeling it and just feeling the profile of that there, I think they've probably got a couple of years left in them before they were. And it very much depends as well, if you're going to ride it in the wet a lot, that aluminium is going to get milled away a lot faster by the gunge on the brake pads than if you just rode it in the dry. They'll last a lot longer. A couple of other things about it then. The front tyre is knackered, so we can see it's very badly perished. It's died some time ago. The rubber has gone hard. It's not safe to ride. That's it, the end, because at any time it might fail. And the irony is it's still got its pips on it. So I suspect what that is, it's just been sat still for too long, possibly in a conservatory or something like that, and the rubber has just perished.
So it's not worn out, it's died.
It's died because effectively what's happened is that the rubber has just broken down at, I don't know, molecular level or whatever you want to say. I'm not a physicist, but you can see, look, it's not safe. It's starting to separate. There's no way on earth I'd trust that. There's a big cut in it just there as well. Another annoying thing, quick releases should both be on that side of the bike, but that is a 30-second fix because you take the wheel out and turn it around. Next I'm going to look at the brake. It's bolted in quite firmly. It's not quite set up right because there's a load of barrel adjuster been wound into it there, which actually shouldn't be used to set the pad distance. That's there to compensate for pad wear. So I would look to reset the position of this cable. The action of the caliper is really nice. Quite often what you find with brake calipers is gunge gets in all of the pivots and then you get a slow return when you let go of the lever. They don't spring apart very nicely. But this one is absolutely mustard. No problems at all with that. Which also tells me that the cable leading up to it is clean and tidy and isn't contaminated. That means that the inner is slipping nicely through the outer. It also tells me that the lever action is good. There's a nice positive clonk there, and I'm getting equal bite left and right, so they're good for bite, they're good for synchronization, by which I mean, is one pad coming up and then the other one's coming to the party a bit late? Nah, they're both going dink, dink, which is what I'm looking for. The pads themselves could be lined up better with the braking surface. They're not quite where I'd put them. They're a bit dangerously close to the tyre up there, so I'd probably be tempted to drop them by a mil or two. But I think the brake blocks themselves on first inspection, they look like Shimano ones to me. Difficult to say, they're not the cleanest, but they look like Ultegra cartridge pads. And they feel all right.
Do you think they're original? I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it, for sure, but...
I mean, what the bike's, like we said, the bike's 9 years old or something, so it's not very likely given the amount of wear to the rim. But they're good quality things, which speaks about good maintenance. Someone hasn't put, a pair of cheapy kind of like AliExpress, whatever, jobs on it. These are actually quite good. So yeah, that brake's behaving itself. It's pretty good. The next big ticket item that I always look for is the headset bearings. So there's a couple of things I'm looking for. Is there actually play in the fork? So what I'm actually doing at the minute is I'm trying to do this with the fork in the head tube to see if it's got movement. It hasn't. It's fine. But when I do that, it sounds rough.
I can hear it from here.
You can hear it from there. Oh, that's good. I was going to say bring the microphone closer, but actually it sounds like you don't need to. They're not the worst. Sometimes mountain bikes especially, or gravel bikes that have had a hard winter, you turn them and it's like it's awful.
Yeah,
but there is that. 9 times out of 10 it's the lower headset bearing. Top ones tend to survive quite nicely. The lower one dies quite quick because it's the one that's getting hit by this wheel spray. And you can see there is the other tell is the rear of the brake caliper bolt there. This hole is almost always full of crap, and it's the same crap that gets sprayed up into there like that, which is what kills the lower headset bearing in here. We don't have time to drop the fork out, but if I was doing the full, I'd be putting on my list right now of work, I'd be going headset service. I'm going to go that way on the bike, but another thing I'm doing behind all of this as I go is I'm actually looking at the condition of the carbon, because there are a lot of myths around about materials that die over time. Carbon, people think that carbon dies over time or starts to go brittle or whatever else. But what I'm looking for is any visible cracks. It's hard to tell on this bike because I think it's kind of painted but not. I can't work out whether it's like a matte lacquer over carbon or whether it's painted black. Difficult to say. But what I do want to know is there any cracking anywhere? Is the carbon starting to separate? This is all a bit of a one-piece moulding. You've got a bit
scratch
of yeah, something scratched. It's not structural. It's not an issue. That's actually in the surface. Actually, that answers my further question. It is lacquered because that's the lacquer that's been dug there a little bit.
You're happy with that? That's not a structural concern?
No, I don't think so. It's not. I mean, I'd be more worried if there was evidence about here of those bars coming around in a crash and doing that.
Okay.
But I don't think it's that. I think that's just where it's been in a garage and someone else has lent something else against it. It's not overly worrying me. So we're kind of at the... Do you want to do that bit again?
No, it's okay, yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
I'll go.
I'll style it out.
That's fine. You definitely need to leave that in the video. Okay. So moving on back then, we're kind of at the business end of things now. So about in the centre of the bike here is where a lot of potential issues can occur. So before I get down to the kind of expensive end of things, there's a little thing up here. Is the saddle secure in the clamp? Yes, it is. It's too far back, quite frankly. You can see all the marks are poking out just there. There's nothing visible there. So there's a risk with that you go over a big bump while your bum's sat there like that, and there's enough compression or cantilever that clean down, and at the very least it'll bend these saddle rails.
Yikes.
So I would always look to, because look, you've actually got all of the clamp off the back. It is so common. I changed the saddle position. I'm probably going to risk making myself sound like a bit of a nanny state here, but I changed the saddle position on probably 90% of the bikes that come through.
90%?
Yeah, because they're always wrong. I bet they're always dangerous. That's dangerous. You're outside of the safe range. That clamp needs to be in the middle of that.
Is that a sign the bike is the wrong size, perhaps?
Frequently.
Okay.
Yeah, if someone's doing that, the bike's not the right size for them.
Too cramped up.
Or the other one, to be quite blunt, is they've had a crap bike fit.
Oh. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a bike fit. Okay.
Okay.
So moving down then, I think it's a carbon seat post, but with an alloy head. So I'm just going to quickly do this. Just ask myself, is it starting to fail there? I don't really think I've ever seen it, to be honest with you, but I'm just a bit worried about that joint there. Feels all right to me. Seems okay. Moving down, the other thing I would do with this is check to see whether the seat post is seized into the frame. And that seems to happen with any combination of materials. I've seen carbon seized to carbon. I've seen carbon into steel. I've seen alloy sees itself into a steel, into an alloy frame. So actually, almost every time what I'd do is I'd whip that off, pull this out, clean it, put some more compound or carbo grip on it, put it back in, because it's a big win that is actually. You'd be amazed how many times that will write a bike off. Now onto the biggies, because really this is where you are potentially going to get issues.
But hopefully not today though.
Well, no.
But potentially, yes.
Yeah.
The
So
money
for this,
pit.
We need a dummy pedal, because it's
That's
not
cool.
come with any pedals. So we'll thread that in there like that, because it means I can manually turn the cranks by hand. So just what you've got on here then, before we carry on. It's a Praxis crankset. I think, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I think Specialized got into bed with them around about kind of the mid-2010 time. That most of their bikes seem to come with this on now. I think they've probably got some kind of deal with Praxis. The thing with Praxis stuff is you have to fit their bottom bracket, because it's the spindle widths change side to side. It goes from a 30 down to a 28 from memory on the back. So it has a right cup and a left cup and they don't match. So it's a press fit bottom bracket shell. I think it's 46mm diameter, but it's still only 68mm wide. So normally when people go to press fit, what they do is they do it to get rid of the external bearing cups, and they just make the whole thing a big lump of carbon for maximum
bearings
stiffness.
inside.
Bearings inside.
Okay.
A la every press fit thing you've ever seen. But for some reason Specialized kept it at 68, made you put the bearing cups on the outside, but made it press fit as well. So what the standard is on this bike is PF30 outboard. And you're always going to need to buy some kind of adapter for that if you want to go to a Shimano crankset.
Yeah, it's a shame it doesn't have an Ultegra crankset. This generation of
I'd want to
Ultegra
make
is
it
lovely.
series. I would want to make it series if it was me. And right now, Ultegra cranksets, they abound. They're easy to get. The other thing that you could consider doing, which I've done quite a lot of times recently, put a 12-speed one in. They work just as well, and there's loads of them around now. Go straight in. 12 and 11-speed cranksets at Ultegra level. They play quite nicely.
That's the issue with this bike. This generation, kind of peak bottom bracket standard changing.
They're all over
evolving.
the place.
Yeah,
It's a
so
nightmare.
knowing what you've got in your bike,
They'll call it something as well. That's the other issue that I think Specialized at this time. I think Cannondale were doing it as well. They put a big BB30 sticker on the bottom of it, and then you look at it and you're like, it's not actually BB30. That's PF30 asymmetrical, or it's BB30A, or it's this, that, and the other. Yeah. So you need a bike mechanic just to go, yeah, it's not that, it's that.
Yeah.
And I've seen enough of these to know this is, like I say, it's a Praxis press fit into a PF30 outboard shell. So your bearings are always going to be outside. You can buy them though. You can get what you need. Like I say, loads of different people make them.
And hopefully the bottom bracket shell is fine, but we don't know until we take it apart.
Yeah, I think from memory with these, I've taken a few of these out in the past. What they are is actually quite nicely made, because I think there's an aluminium billet in there. It's not straight to carbon.
Okay.
So there's a nice sleeve. It goes all the way through. You can't see through it. It's sleeved, which is a good thing, which means that the cables will be underneath it in a void in the bottom of the bottom bracket area, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
There'll be an aluminium tube that you'll see straight through. You press your BB into that. It's not a badly made system. Why they didn't thread it, I have no idea, because why would you still have a narrow 68mm shell when, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's daft. They may as well have put some taps in it and threaded it. Anyway, let's carry on. So I'm going to jump down here a minute and I'm going to have a look at this. So with regard to your crankset then, it's a 5236, so it's a Pro Compact crankset, which is appropriate for a race bike, quite frankly. I think it's done quite a few miles as well, and this is the more important thing. It's reasonably healthy, but I think some of these teeth are starting to get a bit worn. I think it's done its miles. I think this went on its stock, and I think some of these are starting to get a little bit sorry for themselves. Not great. They're all right, but they're not great. The other thing you tend to find with this stuff as well, I'm going to stand back up for a second, shifting as nice on aftermarket cranksets from the small ring to the big ring, they just don't play that well. You know, the Shimano front derailleur kind of does this with a chain and goes, let's go uphill. And the only thing that ever does that perfectly is a Shimano crankset. Yeah. Because they have all of the fins and the profiles on the back of the big ring that just wants to drag that chain. Some of this stuff, it'll cough a few times and then it'll kind of go, oh yeah, all right, I'll get there. And the Cannondale ones are the same, they're made by FSA. They just have a flat back to them and it's not enough. So it means a derailleur has to work really hard. So your front shifting would definitely improve by chucking some Shimano in there.
Okay.
The derailleur itself is clean and tidy, and it's moving quite nicely and it looks healthy. It's still got its little rubber damper on the inside. It is cabled correctly, even though it often to people that looks wrong. The little pin profile is where it should be. The cable is running through it in the correct order. Cable itself seems quite healthy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actuate it manually while I turn the cranks. So I've got my left hand on my dummy pedal and I've got my right hand all the way over here on the shifter. Yeah, I mean that cable's nice. It's working fine. The shifter feels good. So the left hand shifter up the top of the bike feels good, and it's going in, and it is
Noisy, though.
It's noisy because it's big at the minute. But the trim is working. Look, so if you watch the front derailleur again, a little bit of trim, probably a bit too much tension, but the trim is working. It's there. Look, small ring, and then the 4th shift inboard. So it's doing its job. Perfectly all right. And these were a good front derailleur. These were quite good. The newer version of this with the top hat and the kind of multiple hinges here and stuff, they're good as well. But these, I still think these are great because the leverage ratio on is massive. It's absolutely enormous. Like, you've got this lovely big arm on the top, just gives it loads of pull. It's a great system. There, seems quite happy. There's not much wrong with it. It's mounted straight on the frame. It's bolted in nice and tight. It's not doing anything I wouldn't expect it to do. It's doing its job. So that whole system at the minute is playing quite nicely. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check that bottom bracket, and this is a bit like the headset check I did earlier. Does it feel healthy? Has it got play in it? So you can see what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to flex it left and right, and I'm trying to move it around. Can your camera pick that up?
I can hear something, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not very healthy.
Oh dear.
And there are 2 reasons.
Oh dear.
There are 2 things that might be. If I was to take a educated guess based on experience, it's probably the non-drive side bearing.
Oh.
The only other thing it might be is this crankset might not have enough preload to it. There's a big preload bolt on this side here. I'm doing this blind, but I'm pointing my finger at that there.
Yes, there is a bolt.
Yeah. So the preload bolt might need doing up a bit more because there is play in that crankset. If it's the same bottom bracket that's been on the bike since it was new, which
seems likely,
probably, then it probably needs to go in the bin, because frankly a Praxis bottom bracket that's done 8 or whatever years has had its best life, and now it's time to give it a Viking funeral. Do you know what I mean? Literally take it out in the garden and set fire to it. So yeah, there is play in that.
Okay.
And the only real way to know whether it's really healthy or not, the other thing that I would do, and I'm not going to do today, actually take the chain off and just spin the cranks freely, and listen for that same noise you got on the headset, like horrible grumbly bearings. Just do that. Ostensibly, normally, if I'm doing this kind of full assessment and I start to suspect a bottom bracket, I'll lose the chain, because it's very hard to hear a duff bottom bracket while the chain, because you're getting all that going on, I can't hear it.
Yeah.
You've got the noise from this, so you isolate all the other things and spin it with your fingers and have a listen, and you'll know within seconds if it sounds rough and there's a bit of play in it, it's done. Okay. Praxis BB, you need the special tools.
Okay, great.
Luckily I keep 2 sets in stock. You can't get them out without their tools. You can't just put a Shimano Holotech thing on it. It's a special
That's annoying.
tool. I'm going to grab them. I'm going to go off camera for a second. They look like this. So their stuff is called a Praxis M30, and it uses that tool profile, and you need both sides at the same time, because you unthread one half while you hold the other half still. Because it's press fit, but it's not. It's really confusing. One bit presses in and the other bit grabs it and threads onto it. It's a kind of...
Okay.
So you need special tools.
Which you have, of course, because you're a pro bike mechanic.
I am a bike mechanic.
But kind of annoying, you need a special tool for...
Yeah, but you know what, that's the bike industry. That's how it is. You need all kinds of special tools. If I didn't need special tools, I'd make more money. Because I wouldn't have to buy all this stuff on the wall.
True.
So that's that.
Anyway.
Right. So this is usually a good thing to do. This is quite a good. This is a bit like the rings on trees. If you have a look under here at that bit, it tells you quite a lot about what's been going on with the bike. So hopefully your camera picks that up quite well.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is the cables are coming through the inside.
They're very exposed, aren't they?
They really are, and this is a terrible system. So they look quite clean to me. In reality, with this system here, it tends to clog quite badly with dirt. what I have done in the past with that system, if the frame will permit it, is sometimes I'll sleeve those, so I'll envelop them in like very, very low profile plastic tubing inside that to isolate them from the weather. Or the other thing that you can do, which I've done a lot recently, is you bypass the whole system, you take the cable stops out of the bike, and you put outers all the way through the frame and out the other end. And then it doesn't matter what's going on inside the bike.
You can do that with the frame, can you?
The only roadblock will be that bit there, but I bet you I could get it through.
But you can do it down to the bottom bracket where it's exposed currently.
So effectively what I'm proposing is, this is a thing, you don't want to go doing it on a bike that's still under warranty, and you don't want to go doing it yourself unless you're very, very good at mechanicking and you have a really good understanding. But I've done it in the past where there's a bike where the shifting isn't very good, because actually they insist on the cables going from outers to no outers through a system like that and out the other end, and there's a million bends in it and the shifting just won't run cleanly. So what I've done in the past is I've drilled out the stops here, threaded an internal routing kit and just pulled a single length of cable outer all the way back through the frame.
Oh wow.
And now it doesn't matter, effectively. And I tend to find that works really, really well.
So this bike doesn't need that, but you would recommend that?
It doesn't need it, but you're going to have to spend some money on it, and the shifting will improve. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on looking at the drivetrain before I kind of turn my attention to the brake, the wheel, the chain stays. I'm going to look at the drivetrain for now. And the most important thing has got to be, do you need a new chain? And a good indicator of how well the bike's been looked after actually is, what does the chain look like cosmetically? That's kind of almost like a visual service history. And it's not terrible. It's not over-lubed. You know, it's not clad in gunk, which is a classic kind of ham-fisted maintenance trick. I would put the tool on it. This is Park Tool chain checker. Pull the trigger. Yep. Okay. 50% wear, 75% wear, 100% wear. You hit that and more. So this chain died about 4 years ago, and frankly, should have been replaced
4 years
a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah. If I see a chain that's that worn, and I'm already worried about your big ring as well, I'm thinking, yeah, this has got quite worn teeth, I'm going to worry about your cassette now.
And my bill going up.
Yeah. Ching, 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 I'm like... Yeah, so I'm worried about your cassette. So this is an Ultegra cassette. It's series. I can see the lock ring just there has got Ultegra written on it. It's fine. And I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me shift it down quickly. Let's put the bike back in the big ring. And incidentally, that cable to the rear mech feels lovely. So what I really want to know with this cassette then is it as badly worn as that chain and this chain ring? And I suspect it is, and the reason I suspect it is normally if you've got a cassette that's in very good condition, but a chain that's in, frankly, atrocious condition, they won't play well together. You'll find the shifting will hang, and it will chuff a bit, and it will get delayed. But actually what I did notice when I did a little bit of a manual shift a minute ago is the shifting up and down this was fantastic. You would think that's good news. It's really bad news, because it means that not only is the chain knackered, but the cassette is also equally knackered, so they're happy together. So on a cassette, the usage pattern is almost universally the middle bunch of gears here. It's normally 5, 6, 7 and 8, something like that.
That's mean like the most common gears used.
Yeah, you spend your life in the middle of the block, okay? This is gear 1, contrary to popular belief. This is not 11th, this is 11th. And no one ever really spends much time in these gears. When you throw a cassette in the bin, what you normally find is gear 11 or 10 or whatever has got nowhere. Because who spends that much time in top? You know, you might go out for a 2-hour ride and of that you maybe spend 3 minutes in top before you have to... So it's never worn. But these ones are almost always absolutely knackered because you live your life in the middle of the block. Especially in England.
Makes sense.
England's rolling, isn't it? You go up, down, like that. And I can see straight away that this has absolutely had it, because this might be hard to pick up on camera, but if we take that one there as a really good example, the valley between those two teeth in there, I'm putting my finger in it now, is no longer C-shaped. It's become like an elongated lozenge. Like, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
It should be like that, but actually, and the reason it's gone that shape is that that old chain has been inside it, banging around like that and sawing it open.
Okay,
is the best way to describe it. So this This cassette, and the problem with cassettes is you can't buy bits of cassette.
You could just buy 4 sprockets.
It'd be really nice, wouldn't it, if Shimano went, oh, you want the 16? You want an 8th gear?
Yeah.
And they'd post you one out for $2.99, but they wouldn't make a penny, would they? But the reality is cassettes are in a box as they are. Your options for this are you buy another Ultegra 11-speed cassette, which I think they're quite cheap now because we've gone to 12.
So if somebody, not me, put a new chain on the bike, what would happen?
It would slip under power in those gears. And the classic one, I use the word classic a lot, but so whenever I service a bike, I do a sign-off ride. I don't have time to go out on it all day, clearly, but I'll go out on it for 5 minutes around the block here and I'll go and find a hill. And the way that you know if a cassette is worn out, you put it in a small ring, because at that point your power is being multiplied quite a lot. You're now upscaling your wattage quite a lot, and you bang it in one of these gears and it will just go chunk and just slip clean out. You need to put a new chain and cassette on it.
Okay.
If you only do one, you'll get explosively bad results. My next big concern is, well, it's a few things. Is the hanger straight? I mean, on first inspection, it looks it. However, I would still have it straightened because I guarantee it's not. There are bent hangers, and by that, this is the derailleur hanger, okay? It is the tab of metal on the back of this frame that the derailleur hangs off of, and it's pretty much crucial to clean shifting. So its job is to sit north and south at basically 90 degrees to the bike like that, and align this derailleur with the back of the bike. And what we tend to find with derailleur hangers, this thing, is they're either bent inboard, frequently, because the bike's been dropped, which this one has, by the way, because I can see the battle scars. Sometimes they're bent outboard, sometimes they're bent in 2 dimensions. But what we do have is one of these. So this is the tool that every bike person, if you own more than one bike, you need to buy yourself a derailleur hanger straightening tool. You can buy them cheap. This is a Park tool, one really expensive, but you can buy them all kinds of different ones. So what I would be doing, even though I think that's probably straight, I'd still detach the derailleur, put this on it, straighten the hanger. How you use it is not for the scope of this video, but I would firmly, this is the one thing that nobody's ever heard of or owns. We speak to any bike mechanic and you say, what's your most used tool? And they'll go, well, it's a 4mm Allen key, a 5mm Allen key, and then it's a dag.
Wow, okay.
Because every bike's got a bent hanger.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take it's got a bent hanger.
Okay.
Because it has. Going on, is the derailleur itself in good order? So I want to know, is it springing? Has it got play in it? Older derailleurs, this pivot here tends to seize up, and you notice it by basically you'll do that and it won't return. But actually, it's good. Ultegra is so well made anyway. It really is the nuts of group sets. Ultegra, Shimano in general, is just so good. So there's nothing really wrong with that. The main knuckle feels good. It's springing back quite happily, yeah? We think it's probably quite healthy. The barrel adjuster hasn't seized solid into it, which is another common issue. I can turn the barrel adjuster. Sometimes they rust into this body here, but it feels okay. I said earlier, I think your cable's quite good because I felt the shifting on it and it didn't feel too bad. I think that's probably on its way, but that's a separate issue. The other big one to look for, and this does massively affect shifting, and a lot of people miss this, are the jockey wheels themselves in good order.
Well, I'm guessing the chain and cassette are worn out.
So what you tend to find with a bike that's been brutalised all its life is this goes like a Ninja Star, but it doesn't feel too bad. This is the, let me get this right, this is the tension pulley. This is the lower one, and its job is to do that and keep tension. The one that tends to suffer the most is this one up here, which is the guide pulley. And this one's job is, as the name would suggest, is to guide the chain up and down the cassette. I'll get my finger out of the way so you can see it. I'm pointing at it blind, but that's the guide pulley. And actually these are a replaceable component, and it's surprising how many times a year I fit new jockey wheels to Shimano derailleurs, because they do wear. And the real issue is if this guide pulley up here goes wobbly on its axle, which this one doesn't feel too bad actually. They have an axle bolt that goes through them. Just there, look. And they have a little bushing and a bearing. If that starts to get play in it, rather like a wheel hub or something like that, you won't get clean shifting. You just won't, because what happens is as you actuate your derailleur to go over onto the next cog, the guide pulley at the top just goes, nah, I can't, and then it sort of gets there. So So actually, knackered jockey wheels, and they're really easy to fix, like £15 a set or something. And it's another thing that people should be doing more often, is put new jockey wheels in your rear derailleur a lot more often, because they're plastic and they die really fast. These don't feel too bad, and you're going to keep that derailleur. I can't see an issue with it. I think it's probably going to play quite nicely.
And even that, because quite a few bikes on eBay have scuffed rear necks.
Yeah.
But that one, it's had a bit
So this one's
of a
weird.
drop, but it's okay.
So the normal indicator that you've got a bent hanger and a problem with your derailleur is a great big scrape or a knock here, and that's normally indicative that someone's fallen off on the drive side. So when I see a derailleur with a big scab there like that, it means that's got bent.
Okay.
This one's got marks here, and that's weird, because how that bit got marked but this more outboard bit didn't, I don't know. So difficult to say. Could have just been from being leant up against the wall in a garage. Whatever, doesn't matter, it's not affecting it. Your derailleur is behaving itself. We've kind of hit your drivetrain now. We've talked about that stuff.
And the bill's gone up.
Yeah, bling bling. Let's go back to some of the things that we did now around the front wheel then, and repeat that. So I'm going to start, let's do an easy thing first. Let's have a look at your tyre. So you've got a Schwalbe Durano has been put on the back. It's a performance line, nothing kind of a Schwalbe Durano. I can't even tell if it's been put on in the right direction. That's a classic mistake people make. Every single tyre that ever comes into my workshop is always on backwards either rotation, not there.
Do you charge for swapping around?
Nah, because effectively, if I'm swapping the tyres around on your bike, I'm servicing it, aren't I? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
effective. Anyway, this tyre needs to go in the bin.
Okay, yes.
So again, we're looking at the rim wear rate, and I can feel that the rim is getting dished.
It's quite scored, isn't it?
It's quite scored. I tell you what, the other thing I've noticed is it's more scored on the back side than this, which tells me the back brake hasn't been set up correctly from the start.
Okay.
Because what's been happening is, you remember that thing I talked about earlier with the brake calipers, where the pads should have equal bite and they should be synchronized and they should both attack the wheel at the same time. But I think with this wheel here, what's been happening is the non-drive side pad's been coming up and doing most of the work, and then the other pads kind of
Okay.
so the brake bias issue or poor setup means that it actually has been riding around with a back brake that's not equal. So the other things I'm going to check with this wheel then, before we get much further, is I'm going to do exactly the same as I did on the front. I'm going to rock it side to side. It has play in the hub. That's quite often, I think with fulcrum there, that might be that actually the lock rings aren't quite where they should be. This is pretty common, and I tend to see it with Campag wheels as well. They have a bit of a knock to them, and you sometimes have to do the little, they have a kind of a thing which is a bit like a headset of a preload cap that you then have to put 2 pinch bolts through. Maybe, I don't know, I'd have to take it apart and have a look. They're all built differently, but there is some play in that. The free hub sounds lovely, and the other thing is it's not ghosting. So a classic thing with a wheel that is either dead or needs a hub service, a free hub service, is when you spin it like that, what you start to notice is it starts to drive the crankset.
Oh, okay.
Slowly, and it's because it's binding on the inside, but it's not moving an inch. Look, they're good hubs.
Yeah.
I think Fulcrum are pretty good. They have their quirks, but I think they're pretty good. We'll do the thing again that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to pinch the spokes in pairs. I'm not going to bother putting a tension meter on it, but I want to know, has he got any broken ones? Honestly, it's really easy as a mechanic to miss broken spokes or miss loose spokes unless you do this. But these are all in pairs. I think this is probably a 28 hole wheel, maybe, or 24, can't tell. So there is movement in it, but it's half a decent wheel, and you could probably attend to that movement, I think, by just doing the lock rings up a little bit tighter at the ends. So I think it's probably half a decent wheel. I think it's all right, and it's got some years in it yet. Let's have a look at your brake caliper. So again, someone's misused the barrel adjuster here. See it coming back through, look. There's some nice water damage stuck on the inside of it, all this crusty stuff here, look. So I don't expect to see the barrel adjuster wound back to compensate for a poorly set up brake. People do this all the time. They fit the pads, and then to get them really where they want to be, they'll add barrel adjuster. It's not for that. That's what the bolt's for. You set the cable distance. Is the caliper behaving itself? It's a bit gritty.
Yeah.
Hear the chalkiness.
I can hear that, yeah.
So the chalkiness can be one of two things. Back brakes tend to get very badly clogged with dirt. They do. Inside the pivots in here, there's like a bearing sandwich, like a load of plastic bushes and things inside that, and they tend to get filled up with grit from the back wheel. But the other thing I'd consider is I don't think the cable's that good either. Can you hear it?
It sounds rough.
Chalky. Again,
Yeah.
that's the way I'd describe it. You're pulling it, so it needs a recable.
Okay.
It's returning okay. I bet you if I disconnected that cable from the caliper and played with the caliper on its own, it would go click, snap, and just pop. Lovely. Good positive engagement, but it's noisy. It wants a new cable. Your pads, much the same story as the front. I think these are series Ultegra pads. I can't honestly tell you if they're the originals. I suspect they're not. They feel okay. They're cartridge pads, which means you've only got to replace the inserts. So I'd probably budget for that. So I'm nearly at the back of the bike. I'm going to check the quick release. Classic thing with quick releases, just like this one.
So I tried
They're done up like by an absolute
Gorilla.
gorilla, and you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
This is really important. You do not need to over tension your QRs, because all you're doing is crushing the lock nuts in your rear hub. So a couple of things with quick releases. You should be able to get them undone again. I think they should always be they have to be on the back, but on the front they should both be on the same side as the bike. Should be on the drive side. And my preference always is point them up. And the reason you point them up is because then if you're out riding and you look down and there's a quick release lever hanging down, you know that you've got a problem. And while I'm standing here doing this, I can have a look in this direction as well, so I can see the back of some of this stuff now. Your derailleur is in good condition. The classic one normally is the chain's been threaded at the wrong side of this tab here. I see that a lot. The chain comes around here and goes underneath that lug, but people sometimes go, yeah, I'm just going to bypass that, and then they have a really noisy drivetrain. Sometimes you get scrape marks all along the back here, but this is generally in quite good condition. We just dropped your chain. That cassette's dead, but we know that oh, there you go. If you come around here, sorry, just a quick footnote before we finish. That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Fulcrum hubs have this weird system. You see that little grub screw?
Yep.
Really strange to understand. It's typically Italian, but it's quite well engineered. You do the lock nuts up, but you also got a little preload collar that works a bit like a stem clamp.
Okay.
I would look at that on this bike. The only other thing I would do now, just to round this up, and I would do this is more pertinent if it's an older alloy framed bike, but that thing I said earlier about looking for cracks and fractures in the frame, I would now complete that. So I would be looking at tops of the seat tubes are a classic example. Like a really good one is if you got a bike that's painted bright red or bright white and you start to see vertical lines here in the paint, ask yourself, why is that paint separating? Any welds, again, I know it's carbon so it's not welded, but if you start to see paint fracturing at welds, anything like that, ask yourself, is that frame failing? I'm looking at this and I'm looking for obviously broken bits of carbon. I'm going to flex it a bit and I'm going to ask myself, is it creaking? Is it making noise? It's not, because Specialized made quite good frames, quite a tough bike. I think the carbon's in good condition. Don't think it's been crashed. There's not any evidence of that. But that would be my sort of final thing on this assessment. I'd be looking for actual frame damage, because if you've got a damaged frame, you've effectively bought yourself a load of components, not a bike.
Yeah.
And you're never going to repair a frame on an old bike. You just wouldn't. You buy a second-hand bike, find it's got a damaged frame. Okay, well, I've lost on that one then.
So Jim, you've had a good look at the bike. Is it the bargain I thought it was when I bought it on Facebook Marketplace for 400 quid last week, or not?
So my feeling with this is it's actually worth about 400 quid, maybe a bit more. I don't think that this generation of tarmac has absolute classic value like some of your Cannondales, which seem excessively sought after. Yeah, CAD 12s, Super 6 Evo, for some reason they're sky high. I don't think this has quite got the cachet of that. In terms of what I think it is, if I was to give it a rating, I think it's a B.
A B, okay, it's not so bad.
Yeah, it's a B, maybe a B plus, but I'll recap quickly what we've found. So 100% you need 2 new tyres.
Yes.
100% you need a chain and a cassette.
Yep.
You want to put some brake blocks on it. That's
Yes.
not expensive. You're going to budget in for that. The crankset and bottom bracket, you've got two roads you can take. You can just replace the bottom bracket, would be the cheapest way, and hang on to what's already on there and it works fine. Or you go full Shimano.
I think replace a whole lot.
And replace a whole lot. If you can find yourself some second-hand Ultegra.
Yep.
Don't be surprised if that bottom bracket adapter's quite spicy on price.
Okay.
They can be a bit punchy because you're going to buy that from somebody sort of fairly specialised, no pun intended. The wheels, they're fine. They probably want the attention of a mechanic, but I think it's got perfectly decent wheels. I mean, you're probably going to lose your bar tape. It's gone a bit shiny.
And it's somebody else's sweat and toil in there,
which is quite frankly, nobody needs.
I mean, it looks okay, but
but
kill that, burn that,
peel that off, and there's probably all kinds of biohazards underneath. So, and the other thing that we talked about really is a re-cable.
Yes.
And I think that actually you probably would want to give that some serious consideration. So, off the top of my head, I think to kind of put this bike right and do the minimum to it, I think you'd probably be spending about that again. I think you'd be looking at 30 quid for a chain, about 40 to 50 for a cassette, so you're at 80 already. 40 quid's worth of cables, so you're at 120. Your bottom bracket, if you just did the BB, I think these Praxis BBs are about 40 quid, they're not cheap. Okay. So where are we at now? We're already about 180 quid, aren't we? 160 quid, something like that. Tyres are not cheap.
No.
Good tyres. And good tyres are everything. Quite frankly, I'd be interested to find out as well if it takes a 28. Old bikes like this can be funny, can't they?
I'm not sure. I hope so, but it might be tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, some nice GP5000 there.
I mean, what's a kind of a tube version of a GP5000 nowadays? Are 40 quid a pop, aren't they?
All right, and
So,
more probably, yeah.
So where are you at now? You're now in the 250 zone.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna want 2 hours of my labour, maybe 3 to fit all of that. So yeah, I think that reasonably speaking,
okay, so it cost me 400 quid to buy it. We're looking at almost the same to get it to a reasonable state, and that's without even blinging it. That's just getting it to a more roadworthy state than it is right now.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Really,
that's the hidden cost in a bike like this.
Yeah, I mean, it gets cheaper if you've got a handy parts bin in a home in your workshop. Yeah. Sometimes people go, exactly. Yeah, I've got some bits of Ultegra I can use. Great, brilliant. If you've got that stuff, wonderful, and you've got options around using a mix of 105 and that as well. But in reality, I think another 400 quid on top to put it right. But I know that at the end of that, you'd have a hell of a lot of bike, and they are really nice. It's a really fast bike. It's a question really of what you kind of feel happy with. I don't think it's in perfect condition, but I think some of the big ticket items are okay. You know, your derailleurs, your shifters are playing ball, your brake calipers are playing ball. So actually, that's all not too bad.
Yeah.
So cautiously, I'd say, it's probably okay for 400 quid, but you do need to spend some money on it to make it right. But I could make this look quite glamorous, I think, with some of the cleaning and treatments that I do, around this. I think you could make it look quite pretty.
And it would be a good bike, done up.
Every day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, which kind of is the thing, isn't it, now? We alluded to this earlier off camera. I think, do rim brake bikes have any value? And that's a hard question because on the face of it, to the layman, they'd be like, what, I can get a carbon Specialized for 400 quid? You can. But on the other hand, it's QR and it's rim brake, and is there any? Do you see what I mean? That's the harder thing, isn't it? Does it actually carry any value anymore now that we've? Because I think future issues are going to be: can you even get wheels anymore? What kind of prices should people be charging for a bike like this nowadays? Is it even worth anything anymore? It's difficult, isn't it? It's really hard because it's a lovely bike.
Yeah, that's a really sad point. It's a lovely bike, and it still rides really nice, and I'm sure with some upgrades it'll ride extremely well. But is there any point? Does it have a life beyond what we're giving it? And I'm not sure how to end it really. So let us know if you think it's worth spending any money on this bike, I guess. Should I bling it or just scrap it or get Jim to do a modest upgrade on it? Let us know your thoughts down below. And on the topic of rim brake bikes of this generation, I mean, are they worth buying and keeping?
I think that possibly the answer to that is, are you going to be happy with it? And that to me is still a lovely bike. Yeah. And if you yourself are happy with it, and you know that you've bought something you really love, then yes, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But just bear in mind that it's going to get harder and harder and harder to get parts for bikes like this. So that's my takeaway, I think.
I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. I'll put links to Jim's website down below. You need a bike serviced, he's your man. But that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.